And now the second half of the day begins for us. And we're so very happy that you have made time to join us in this endeavor, because we at KCC are trying to curate programs that touch our heart somewhere and are meaningful, and also that we can remember legends who should never be forgotten. So that's why the first exercise of remembering Guru Dutt on his centenary. So in the afternoon, we are very, very delighted that we have amidst us Professor Madhuja Mukherjee. I mean, those of us who are from Calcutta and are from the academic sphere, she is a very popular face, and particularly for her students at Jadavpur University, I think they all look up to her as someone who is one of the best teachers that they've ever had. Madhuja is also a filmmaker of repute, and alongside that, I think when we approached her on behalf of the education vertical at KCC to come forward and deliver this talk, she didn't hesitate even for a minute. And she said, yes, I'll gladly be there. And her talk will primarily focus on Kagaz Ke Phool. And Madhuja has also kindly agreed to do a brief introduction of Pyaasa, which will follow her talk in the evening.
Thank you so much. And it's truly an honor to be one of the speakers here. And it's a great pleasure to have friends, colleagues, and some of our students in the crowd. Yes, I'll be talking about Kagaz Ke Phool, but not only that. And I begin with this idea that it is a biography of Indian cinema, and not how it is commonly believed to be, that it is Guru Dutt's sort of biographical storytelling. And I'll try and complicate that because if I'm saying that it is a biography of the film industry, why am I not simply saying that it is the history of the film industry? Why have a more cooler term, let's say, like biography? So the idea is to think about what biography does, and also to think about what Kagaz Ke Phool does to cinema, cinematic history, and the ways in which we approach cinema. And I am approaching this film as much as student of cinema as I am as a person who has been in practice. So there is something about this film and its sort of incompleteness in a way. Those of you saw Nasreen Munir Kabir's documentary. There is you know, Kaifi Azmi says that there is as much of the film left outside the film that has been released, and so it is this incompleteness of Kagaz Ke Phool that I want to sort of dwell on and talk about. So biography of the industry also because this is such a personalized story of a person who is in the gamut of things, and that becomes important, of being there, of bearing cinema, a cinema, let's say, a life told in films, through films, a life that cannot be lived without films. So what is the cinematic storytelling is what I want to explore. And so it is this, in some ways, this film is heavily layered, and that itself is interesting. The other point that I want to talk about is that it is a personalized story. It is a kind of a biography, like a cinema itself is a character as though, but it is not Guru Dutt's story alone, and that makes it particularly important because those of you are, you know, if anyone here is part of practice, I can see one person here at least, so you can't actually make films alone. You are, nobody can claim really that it is his or her film or their film. And it is this kind of a journey, an exploration that I want to take you through, that what it means. So it is a film which is heavily layered. There are many stories. There is not only one story, but many stories coming together. Not only Dutt's own story, but other stories coming together. And that's what I want to draw your attention to. It's a network of history. It's a web. It's like if you were to, if this was a web page, then you click and you open another page, then you click and you open another page. It's that kind of layering that I am talking about. So there is Pyaasa in Kagaz Ki Phool. Shots, scenes, sequences, themes. And there is other stories like Devdas, which is absolutely narrated. And he is making Devdas in the film. There is a clapboard. There is no two ways about it. But there is also this presence of this figure like Borua. And I will explain it, but it is this kind of narration that we're talking about, and studio period. Let's say if Dutt was lamenting about the conditions in which he was making films, the rise of stars and so on and so forth, why does he set it in 30s? And I think there is more than that, more than a lament. There is a self-conscious retelling, remembering. There is a self-conscious, and this is a marvelous film in a way that it is able to tell the filmmaker's stories that other also experience, and a story of the film industry, and a sort of history of storytelling, also the styles. So there is, of course, the Devdas, but there is also Pyaasa, and there is a series of references that you find which are in the text, outside the text, in other texts, between texts. There is a way in which one can begin to unwrap it, like in folds, and that is what I'm trying to do. So let's say these two shots, they're not in films. They circulate in the public domain, but they're not in films. These were made for the posters. What is there in the film are these two shots. A similar shot like this is also there in Pyaasa. So there is a dialogue that is going between Pyaasa, Devdas, Kagaz Ki Phool, other films. There is also a set of other films that he's talking about, like Vidyapati, Ira mentioned. So, and there are other films. So there is a larger sort of a history at stake. And that is what I want to draw your attention to. What is interesting is how the film begins, Kagaz Ki Phool. It begins from the ending, and hold on to that. It's important. It is already a story of a person who is kind of dead. It's a story that is already forlorn. So this sort of, repeated, that sort of repeated retelling that this is a story told by a dead person of a world that cannot be lived anymore. Why are we telling this story? And I would say that it is a project in remembering. I will just play the clip and then I will take it forward. I think we have to wire the laptop with the sound. আমাকে দিন আমি করে দিচ্ছি এইটার সাউন্ডটা না এটার ইয়েটা প্লে করবো বিছড়ে কভি বারি বারি opening shot, lights, camera. People, public, film viewing, projection.
वक्त है मेहरबां आरज़ू है जवां फिक्र कल की करें इतनी फुर्सत कहाँ वक्त है मेहरबां आरज़ू है जवां फिक्र कल की करें इतनी फुर्सत कहाँ
So, there are many things that I want to pick up. A kind of doing a material history of cinema. There are many elements that one can stitch together. One is this shot with which Pyaasa opens, is also the shot with which a film like Chandidas opens. Then there is the camera. There is a specific camera that he uses. It's not the camera with which Kagaz Ki Phool is shot because it's a cinemascope film. It is a particular camera that you see certain kind of images where you see Pramotesh Borua shooting with. And it's quite interesting if the shots that Ira was showing towards the end when we re-enters the studio, the first thing that he touches is the camera. And camera is this like sort of a sacred thing in shooting. It is really that kind of a holy thing. But there are these sort of archival images that will show that, especially this one, for Rani, you see the Parvo camera with which Borua shot. This is the Mitchell, which was later used. But there are these archival, there's something more I want to pick up here of the people, of the Guru Dutt team that was formed, of V.K. Murthy, of Abrar Alvi, of Wahida Rahman, of Rahman, the actor, of Johnny Walker, of Tuntun, of Raj Khosla, and there is a particular moment that we are talking about, a particular kind of cinema that was imagined, and a particular way in which films could be made, and a particular style of storytelling. So the kinds of camera that are used is this. This is a photograph which is without the lens, and this is the Mitchell. So this kind of interesting kind of weaving that I want to draw your attention to. It is Devdas, obviously, but it is not only Devdas. There is a self-conscious storytelling, and you have to sort of know and recognize like a secret history of cinema industry. There is, let's say, that camera movements that you talk about, that kind of track in, or track out or crane up. It is actually, in some ways, it is already there. In 1935, Devdas, created by Pramotesh Barua, but shot by Bimal Roy. And Bimal Roy also goes on to make Devdas in 55. And then there is Mukti, which is particularly important because it is about this inner tussle and turmoil of an artist, a painter. So I just wanted to show one early tracking shot, quite a marvelous one in Mukti. This is the opening of the film. Quite an achievement, by the way. It is tracking, but you don't see the track. And this is 37. Cameras don't move at this time. So, and then there is Vidyapati, a film in Kagaz Ka Phool which has already been made. There is no linear storytelling. There is no question of whether it is really Devdas. It does not matter. What matters is a cinematic journey that we are talking about. Also, all these films, Chandidash, Vidyapati, Devdas in particular, are cinema of transgression. All about affairs and relationship which are outside within the framework of what is allowed, acceptable, legal, and all that. Also, there is this symbolic Ajanta pictures, which is, I would argue, borrowed from the iconography of Prabhat. So there isn't only, it is not going back to new theaters, it is not going back only to Devdas. There's a network of, there is a series of things that he is conjuring. And that is what I want to draw attention to, the kind of details and why it is a biography. It's a very self-conscious storytelling of the collectives. So this sequence, everything is important. The camera, the reflector, the lights, the bus, the people, the trolley, the movement, everything. And of course, there is the fog created by V.K. Murthy.
देखो तो ये लोग तैयार हुए नहीं। अच्छा जी। एकदम इतनी जल्दी ने कैसे सुलझा लिया?
सारी रात लगी रही।
सारी रात सोई नहीं बिल्कुल?
आपने कहा था ना मुझे काम से ज्यादा पार्टियों में दिलचस्पी है।
वो तो हम लोग तैयार हैं जी। कल रात मैंने तुम्हें काफी डांटा ना?
बंदरिया कहा आपने मुझे।
न जाने मैंने तुम्हें क्यों इतना डांटा। इससे पहले कभी किसी दूसरी हीरोइन को इस तरह से नहीं डांटा।
किसी को भी नहीं?
उन पे अक्सर झुंझलाया, लेकिन डांटने का हौसला कभी नहीं हुआ।
मैं बताऊं, आप शरीफ है ना, इसलिए।
अच्छा?
जी हाँ, कोई भी शरीफ आदमी पराई औरतों को नहीं डांट सकता। क्या सोच रहे हैं आप?
हाँ? कल तुमने मेरी डांट का काफी बुरा माना होगा।
अब मैं आपकी डांट का कभी नहीं बुरा मानूंगी. काफी समझ गई हूँ आपको.
काफी समझ
क्या
गई
समझ
हूँ
गई
आपको is also there in प्यासा.
यही कि आप आप अखरूट जैसे हैं. ऊपर से सब, भीतर से नरम.
If you have seen Kagaz Ki Phool, you would remember that there is an entire scene about the junior artist bringing their daughter to the shoot. So, this is from actually the photographs. I got it from a person who was a still photographer both for Nitin Bose and for Boa, especially later when he left New Theatres and joined MP. So the bus and the makeup room and the hat and this sort of figure. So there is a haunting thing about Devdas, but one can one can dig deeper in the sense that there is this, what I want to draw your attention to is a self-reflective take. It is not simply a storytelling, there's a distancing. There is a way in which he is looking at the story every time from the top, from the catwalk. He is telling you the story, but he is also going into this mode that, yes, I'm looking back to this history. And this history is far more complicated than we can understand, because this is not one person's history. So it is what? It is at the center of the story is also the cinema hall, and this becomes particularly important in the current times. The theater, the cinema hall, the public, the people, and the ways in which we relate to cinema, projection. Remember when we were both looking at, Ira's presentation, but also the documentary, V.K. Murthy was talking about this light, this projection, that projected image. That becomes quite interesting, what happens in the theater. And the ways in which the relationship, the intense relationship of people working on the film set and people watching, and the screen in between, that kind of interface that we are talking about. I'll play two clips back to back. One from when the film, Devdas, which he is shooting in the film, is a success, and the second film, which flops. So, there is silence here.
सुरेश आओ। एक और, एक दूसरे का और करीब हो जाइए। इधर देखिए।
अब अपना वादा पूरा करेंगे ना?
रेडी?
This is after the second film doesn't do well. What is interesting is that the story of self cannot be told without bringing in the self into the theatre, in the space of public, in the public domain. And then Pyaasa, when he returns to witness his success and both to deny the success.
खिलौना है इंसान की हंसती ये बसती है
This shot will return in कागज के फूल.
यहाँ पर तो जीवन से है मौत सस्ती ये दुनिया अगर मिल भी जाए तो क्या है ये दुनिया.
I hope you are noting the sort of mirroring of the shot taking and the kind of evocation that is created.
भटकती है बदकार बनकर जवां जिस्म सजते हैं बाजार बनकर यहाँ प्यार होता है व्यापार बनकर ये दुनिया अगर मिल भी जाए तो क्या है ये दुनिया अगर मिल भी जाए तो क्या है. ये दुनिया जहां आदमी कुछ नहीं है वफा कुछ नहीं दोस्ती कुछ नहीं है. ये दुनिया जहां आदमी कुछ नहीं है वफा कुछ नहीं दोस्ती कुछ नहीं है जहाँ प्यार की
again a repeated shot taking of the figure looking and the camera looking back.
भी जाए तो क्या है ये दुनिया अगर मिल भी जाए तो क्या है।
So there is a really dynamic relationship between the camera, the character, the theme, the fear, the celebration, the rejection. The characters, the characters are being, his films are being rejected, his work is being rejected. He is rejecting the camera, he is rejecting the people. It's a very intense kind of a reflective and kind of a constantly there is a कार फोन बच्चे ठीक है but so this kind of intensity, let me explore it another time. So let's say the Paro effect, and this is another thing that I want to talk about, which is, let's say, the figuration of Paro. This image, when she becomes Paro and she enters the studio, she is made to sort of with wet hair and this where take the ghara and the sari sort of. On one hand, this is a shot from Pramotesh Borwa's Devdas, but this is a particular moment that is picked up for the introduction of the film in Kagaz Ki Phool, which is what? A moment of a violent moment, a moment of a moment when Devdas hits Paro, a moment of separation. And the film repeatedly does that, from beginning with that this is a story which is doomed, to repeatedly bringing up the Devdas references, which actually is already as though the film has ended. So what is this storytelling which constantly begins from the end, and it is the end of the idea, end of cinema, end of self, and repeated retelling of that a doomed story. This is an image of Yamini Rai's Pujarini, and this is this moment when he first sees Paro dressed, Shanti dressed as Paro. I've today while watching a clip from Pyaasa, I recall that in Pyaasa he says when he goes away, when he leaves, when he's speaking to Meena, that last sequence where he says that I'm going away, he says Mujhe Shanti ki talash hai, and then in this film. So there is so much of layering into it, but what I am trying to say that it is very, very complicated. So why is he telling Borwa's story? Why is he telling the story of others? How do we really understand this sort of this quest for cinema? So this clip, when she walks in first into the studio. This is not the Waqt Ne Kiya sequence, this is prior to that.
पारो, अपने ख्यालों में जैसे मैं हमेशा देखता रहा हूँ।
अपने ख्यालों में मैं जिसे हमेशा देखता रहा हूँ।
मुद्दत से मेरी आंखें इस रूप की तलाश कर रही थी। इसी रूप की,
जी
वही सादगी, वही भोलापन। तुम सचमुच पारो हो?
जी, मेरा नाम शांति है।
Well, so this is as much a love affair with the cinematic image as is it with maybe the person. But this remembering and recalling and retelling is particularly important because by the time, by 1940, Borua's Devdas, made in 1935, was already a myth. And nobody had begun any film at that time with the first shot is back to camera. Even Pyaasa ends with back to camera. That's how films end, that the characters are back to camera and they go into the horizon. Right. Here, in 35, this person is beginning a film with the character back to camera entering the scene. So Abbas, who at that point in time was a journalist and later a filmmaker, says, do you remember it? Out of a very lens of the camera walked away a slender figure of a woman. Going further and further, her back turned to the audience, a puja thali in her hand. A beautiful figure and mysterious. The audience kept guessing, who is she and why? Where is she going? So it is this sort of a visual recall. I'm trying to draw your attention to not only a thematic of, okay, Devdas loving Paro and then Paro saying that you can go to hell and so on. And then, but there is something more invested here. Yourself, cinema, and a life lived in that making. A collective kind of a history, which cannot be told without a film like Kagaz Ki Phool. So this is a sequence from Devdas where Parvati goes into Devdas's room to ask him that whether he would marry her, and he of course says no. But that aside, look at this movement. Note the camera movement, note the kind of high contrast lighting, note the mirror. Binoy's own Devdas does not have, this kind of style though.
Devdas.
If we were to do some study of Borua, then we could have gone back to Gauranindranath's paintings of Shapnocharini. And you can see how an image is floating from a film, from painting. This, 1925, to 35, to 57 to 59 and so on. There is of course this very famous, Tagore and the Obishar image, which is used by Subroto Mitro and Shotitra in Devi. So what I'm trying to draw your attention to, there is a desire, there is a story, but there is a desire that is mediated through images and cinematic projection. There is no love story without the cinema at stake. And in fact it is cinema that is at stake. That, if he does not even notice Shanti, accepting when that face is projected. There is this entire sequence of them meeting outside in the rain, quite a romantic possibility. He does not recognize her when she enters the studio with the coat. When does he actually notice her? When that image is projected? When she becomes an image? When she becomes what he wants. So let us see this sequence when Shanti enters the studio floors. Please note this singing, we will come back to that. So, we just saw VK Murthy, by the way, behind the camera.
जी ये कोट है इसमें.
And the other person is Ratra, who is the cinematographer of Bazi.
दिल्ली में आपने दिया था ना मुझे वो बरगद के पेड़ के नीचे.
बॉस. जी हाँ, आप यहाँ कोट वापस देने आई हैं?
जी हाँ, जी नहीं, मैं काम की तलाश में बम्बई आई थी. कोर्ट में आपका कार्ड और पता मिल गया, तो यहाँ मैं.
अच्छा, मैं शॉट ले लूँ, फिर आपसे बातें होंगी. गुप्ता, इन्हें कुर्सी दो.
Yes, boss.
Shut down.
685.
Cut it. Okay.
चलो.
Lights off. नंबर 10 और नंबर 11 प्रिंट करो.
बहुत अच्छा. साहब वो लड़की आई थी ना वो.
I requested you to note the song because the sequence that is being shot right at the beginning is actually towards the end of the 35 Devdas when he's about to die. And this is so, the sequence that he shoots is, again, so this repeatedness of a story, of a death that is foretold, a story that cannot be told, a story that can only be told through your own death. There is some kind of a physical bearing of cinema. A mark, a stain, a stench that cinematic medium leaves on your body. So this song, a beautiful one sung by Saigal, is also, there is one shot where you see there's a street shot. It's also the setting for Pyaasa, Jine Naaz Hind pe kahan hai. So, yeah. So this one outdoor shot that you have, Chandramukhi.
जी के बान का जी के बना पिया बिना
Note the letterbox, and I find it really interesting the kind of elements that he picks up from Devdas to reset them in Kagas Ke Phool.
देवदास देवदास
So, in the Waqt Ne Kiya Kya Hasi Sitam, there is a particular setting. They're already shooting Devdas's End, the last journey, which I find extremely interesting, and also because when Barua creates this visual imagery of Devdas going in the bullock cart, and then, he's about to die, and then Parvati gets to know and she runs. That scene is not in the novella. It is his invention, but every Devdas that you see goes back to that Barua ending. But here there's something more interesting, almost like a painter. There's an abstraction. There is the bullock cart. And what is the sequence? When they express their love for each other. This is repeated, that this is the end. The beginning is the end. And of course, it is this extraordinary cinematic thing which returns in many films. In many films, the Pujarini, or this is exactly how Bansali shoots Devdas's End, and so on. But it is the two things that I want to draw your attention to, and principally the second point is that there is a material history of cinema. There are people, there are these people who are working. There is a machine like camera, there are lights, there are reflectors, there are objects that create the film. There is a prehistory to that, and prehistory to prehistory, and you are part of that. There is no escape. You cannot tell the story. It is not about, a filmmaker who wants to make a film and then falls in love with someone, and then there is a sort of a affair that has gone wrong. It's a cinematic history that has gone wrong. And so, this is where they express their love. Waqt ne kya kya hasi sitam. Already the lyrics is like, already the sitam has happened, right? And they are actually expressing their love. So this is not the song actually, this is just the dialogue sequence before that. There is a particular costume that Paro or Shanti is wearing, which appears like she's already married.
शांति, अभी तक तो कोई स्टूडियो में नहीं आया। तुम इतनी जल्दी कैसे चली आई?
आप भी तो चले आए इतनी जल्दी।
वो तो मेरी आदत है कि शूटिंग से एक आध घंटे पहले।
मुझे मालूम है।
अच्छा, और क्या मालूम है तुम्हें मेरे बारे में?
सब कुछ।
शायद इसीलिए उस रात के बाद तुम मेरा हाल मालूम करने नहीं आई।
उस रात के बाद, as in the night he had an accident, okay?
चले जाने के लिए कहा था, दूसरे दिन आने से तो नहीं मना किया था।
तो आप चाहते थे कि मैं आऊं?
ये स्वेटर किसके लिए बुन रही है?
है कोई?
मिस्टर कोई या मिस कोई?
मिस्टर कोई।
लेकिन तुम्ही ने तो कभी कहा था दुनिया में तुम्हारा कोई नहीं, तो फिर ये कोई
मेरे ही जैसे हैं, बिल्कुल अकेले।
She plays an orphan in the film, like many actors who join the industry without, just to earn, and that's how it begins.
शांति, तुम शायद नहीं जानती कि मैं मुद्दत से बाल बच्चे था।
मैं जानती हूँ।
I want to draw attention to the light on the face, which is also there in Bimal Roy's Devdas. And also here, no one is copying from each other. I'm not trying to say that. I'm trying to say films are made. And they're made with a certain kind of labor, like to do this, whatever light, they took 15 minutes. So it is that kind of work and a process that we are talking about. V.K. Murthy, let's say, talks about Waqt ne kiya kya hasi sitam, and what is talking about is, we have seen in the, I'll skip that part, about the bound sunlight that he talks about actually quite lucidly in the documentary, or you can read, but this is what he is talking about, which is important, which is that in that set there wasn't nothing much excepting the light. The light is the prop there. The light, it is around the light that the characters move. It is around that cinematic projection, that beam, that cinema happens. So that, and then the uses of night, fog, lights and color also. So what is important is this making of fog, which also Subroto Mitra did. They created fog. Also shooting in real outdoor, in night sequences, not day for night. This is unthinkable. Everybody warned Murthy that nothing will be shot. Chobi udbe na. A simple thing. Like if light does not fall on celluloid, no image is created. And they're taking that kind of risk. So we're talking about that. Karte hain. So we're talking about stories of crisis, yes, but of self, of cinema, a collective strive, because possibly out there is an ideal cinema that they are always moving towards but never reaching. For instance, in Pyaasa, the book that is published is, by Vijay, the book that Gulabo publishes by selling her jewelry, is called Parchaiya. That is actually Sahir's book of poems called Parchaiya, published in 55. So here, where he says Parchaiya, and if you this is from Parchaiya, where if I were to just read the beginning or the second para, that evening I came to know that when the brother is killed in war, then the sister's youth is traded in rich men's pleasure houses. I remember the evening wrapped up in the sun's blood. I remember how the glowing dreams of love came to an end. This is 2 years before Pyaasa. Pyaasa, by the way, has no story credit. You can go back and check. There is no author's claim. There is a self-conscious way of saying that this is a particularly a collective story. So, Chronicles of Death foretold. There is, Manto's stories about cinema are pretty well known, but Chughtai writes the story, which is allegedly on the lives of, on Gita Dutt and Guru Dutt, Ajeeb Aadmi. But I also want to sort of consider the sound of Chughtai's own biography called Kagzi Hai Pehran. So, paper clothes, paper flowers, and Ajeeb Aadmi. Chughtai actually also wrote two other novellas which are based on the film industry. One is Masuma and the other is Jangli Kabutar. And in fact, the last film that when he was alive was being shot is by Shahid Latif, Chughtai's husband, which is a remake of apparently of New Theatre's President. But let me read out a section from what Chughtai says about the film. Chughtai does something which is really, she puts the story in a linear way. So in Chughtai's story, the character is called Dharamdev, and they first shoot Chaudhry Ka Chand, which is called Purnima in the film. And after shooting all other films, they begin to shoot Kagaz Ke Phool, which is called Jhoote Khwaab. Right? Because, in a way, there is no film left after Kagaz Ke Phool. But that is precisely the point. Kagaz Ke Phool comes about 6 years before Dutt dies. It is, and after that he makes films. It's a terrible foretelling. It's what younger people would call a manifestation. It is that. It's a terrible foretelling. And I'll read out Chughtai's Very Strange Man, a section from there. The story of Jhoote Khwaab was based on Dharam's own life. The story of a successful film director who had become sick of the tedium of his life. He comes across a young woman and transforms her into a successful film star. His wife gets in the way and the young woman leaves everything and goes away. The director becomes emotionally paralyzed. Soon people forget him. He comes to the studio one day looking for the dreams that he had lost. No one recognizes him and he's thrown out. He returns when no one is there and hides in the studio. While there, he recollects his past life and then falls to death from a platform. The old worker who sees him recognizes him as a great director of his time. The film was completed in a few months, except for Dharam. No one else saw anything worth in the film and it flopped wherever it was shown. Dharam perceived the failure as real success. Completely submerged in this character, he could not resurface. Just like the ill-fated director, he becomes lifeless and paralyzed. So, this is written in 70. There are too many layers and too many stories that the film imbibes. This is the song. We could play that, but since you have seen, and in the interest of time, I'll just move forward. Yes, Chaudhry Ka Chand, which Sadiq shoots, and Sahib Bibi Aur Gulam, which Alvi shoots. If we were to extend the story further and make lives more complicated for us, then in Sahib Bibi Ghulam, there is also this figure of Meena Kumari, unmistakable, her voice, her presence. By then, by 62, Meena Kumari was already infamous for her drinking and for the liver cirrhosis. So it is too many stories there. There is no one story that you can tell, and there are other films. There is of course the Raj Khosla film which comes before Pyaasa, and there are these unfinished stories, Gulzar's Devdas and Asif's Love and God, which was being shot when he died. So it is in this regard that these stories will remain unfinished. Murthy says that, the end of Kagaz Ke Phool. The end of Kagaz Ke Phool was also in the studio. The aged Guru Dutt returns and dies in his sleep on the empty studio floor. The next morning, we see him lying in the same shaft of life when the door opens. They do not even know who he is, and that someone recognizes. It was very moving, almost like what really happened to him. So there is a history in folds. Towards the end of this presentation, I'll also talk about the studio space where the film is being shot. That was called Modern Studios, that's own studio, which was demolished and a road was built. It was taken up by the government because a highway had to be built through that. So a history in folds. And I find this Kagaz Ke Phool makeup quite interesting. Why? Because there are these layers. There is Guru Dutt with grey. Then there is a later part when he has a wig. And then there is this sequence, there's a wig on top of the wig, that naqab pe naqab, or, wig pe wig. And I always thought, when I was younger, that there are these two false beards that he has. So it's a quite a something exaggerated, in fact. And why that? So there is something important here happening. So when he returns.
Hey Gopal, किस बेवकूफ को पकड़ के ले आए हो? चलो निकल इसे बाहर. किसी दूसरे एक्टर को बुलाओ. Hey, निकल बाहर.
There is of course that shot from Murda Parasht in Pyaasa. This.
Hey, कंपनी की चादर कहाँ लेके जाता है? संभाल अपना ठीक रहा.
And quite telling, in terms of weaving, stories that are woven. That is gone. A road is there at this point.
से ले लेती है। ये खेल है कब से जारी, बिछड़े सभी, बिछड़े सभी बारी बारी। अरे देखी ज़माने की यारी, बिछड़े सभी बारी बारी। क्या लेके मिले अब दुनिया से, आंसू के सिवा कुछ पास नहीं। फूल ही फूल थे दामन में, या कांटों की भी आस नहीं। मतलब की दुनिया है सारी, बिछड़े सभी, बिछड़े सभी बारी बारी।
Here, comes in and touches the camera.
ज़माने की यारी, बिछड़े सभी बारी बारी।
It's not simply a movie set, you see, there is the light, there is the train, there is this entire paraphernalia, everything else is in the background. So, here they're talking about the studio, and Murthy also says that he says that only RK Studios is there, but RK Studios is also gone. And I just read the news, I think yesterday or day before yesterday, that Filmistan is also going, where Manto worked. So this is a kind of a map, you know, this is literally a map of the studios, but that aside, this is also in some way really pregnant in the ways the streets of memory, the places, the objects, the people, and the kind of histories Kagaz Ke Phool is trying to tell through this person, through sort of bodily gestures. There's an embodiment of this history. So this shot, let's say, if you have seen Pyaasa or you will see Pyaasa, this set will return.
साहब आप और इस घटिया जगह पाए गए? अच्छा अच्छा अच्छा, जाइए साहब, घर जाइए। कौन था ये बड़े नामी फिल्म डायरेक्टर थे भैया, क्या दिन थे इनके। पर इस फिल्म लाइन का कोई भरोसा नहीं, जो कल आसमान पे थे आज पेड़ों तक पहुंच गए।
Also, of course, Devdas. And then he returns. We will skip the rest of the part, and I'll come to the towards the last point, which is one moment. Yeah. So the last point about a relationship, an intense relationship with the apparatus, with the camera, and seeing, and the fear of the camera, and seeing and not seeing. Repeatedly, of course, it is there especially in Kagaz Ke Phool, where he is blindfolded for certain sections, but throughout Pyaasa, when you will see Pyaasa, there is this, he is looking down and refusing to look. There is this gesture of refusing to look repeatedly, repeatedly, repeatedly. So that is a point that I want to gesture towards, and that would be the last point, is that cinema in itself is potentially a radical medium. What it can do, what it can record. It can be a repertoire of memory. It can sort of physically record, physically as though capture things that goes unnoticed, right? Like if you take a shot of me, there is a backdrop that is unintended. There are these sort of material history that we are talking about, of various things, of gestures, of movements, of clothes, of objects, of entire range of things. And it is this that becomes an uneasy thing. It's cinema itself that becomes an uneasy thing. I'll just play the last sequence where this comes before the film flops, where he is scared by the camera itself.
Stop. Stop. आज का सीन लो।
सीन साहब आपको शायद याद नहीं, आज तो गाने की शूटिंग है। जी हाँ, वैसे मैंने अपनी तरफ से सब तैयार कर रखा है, रेंज भी कर लिया है। अगर आप देखना पसंद करें तो
जरूरत नहीं, टेक करो।
बिंदा साहब लाइटिंग रेडी?
रेडी भाई।
आइए तो चलिए। तुम लोग रेडी? यस सर रेडी।
लाइट्स।
क्लेबर ग्रेबला। स्टार्ट प्लेबैक। 1 2
उल्टे सीधे अरे दांव लगाए, हंस हंस फेंका पासा।
उल्टे सीधे दांव लगाए, हंस हंस फेंका पासा। और भाग की चाल भी देख दीवाने, कैसा तुझको फांसा रे,
कैसा तुझको फांसा। हार कभी जीत कभी काहे का रोना रे, हार कभी जीत कभी काहे का।
अरे काहे का रोना रे, काहे का रोना रे।
हार कभी जीत कभी काहे का रोना रे, हार कभी जीत कभी।
कट कट कट। Back up.
Okay, so this is basically, there should not be much more to say after pack up, but what I was, if I were to sum up in a line, then it is this kind of a memory of cinema lived through, being told through one's own life, a history of cinema that gets entangled with various collective histories. Thank you.